Blog Talk Radio.
Welcome tonight to the Light of Truth broadcast with Michael Boldea.
All right, and that is what they call a cold open. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. This is the Light of Truth radio broadcast. I am your host, Michael Boldea, and as of today, May 9th, 2019, we are live. And as always, there's a lot to talk about, both within the United States, internationally, some things that we're seeing that I haven't heard anybody else connecting. So we'll get into it, talk about it, see what comes of it, because that's what we do every Thursday, at least as often as we are able to do it live. We talk about current events in light of the prophetic, current events in light of seeing this present world perhaps through a different prism than others might, because what was it, last week or 2 weeks ago? I think it was last week. Chunky Kim went and met with Vladimir Putin, and not so coincidentally, it would seem that North Korea has started lobbing missiles again. Understand that anyone who believes this is a coincidence, anyone who believes that there is no connection between Chunky Kim and Vladimir Putin having met and him starting to lob missiles again, isn't seeing the big picture. Right now, Vladimir Putin is using the obese man from North Korea as a cutout, a big cutout, a large cutout to be sure, but it's a cutout. He's using him to do his bidding. And I don't know what the Russians promised the North Koreans, but obviously it was more than the Americans promised, because this was the game all along. This has always been the game. This will always be the game. The game doesn't change. It's whatever country offers a better deal, that's who they'll go with. And the news of the day is that North Korea launched 2 short-range missiles, marking the second weapons test in less than a week, and further straining U.S.-led efforts towards denuclearizing the Korean Peninsula. I think if the Russians promised Kim Jong-un that they would have his back, and if the Russians have the North Koreans back, then just by the current political structure of the planet, the Chinese are going to have the North Koreans back, then he's free to commence with missile testing and whatever else he desires, because it's one thing to set North Korea straight. It's quite another to attempt to set Russia, China, and North Korea straight. And I think all the big players in this realize it, and this is why they've, mustered up the courage to start lobbing missiles once more. So the South Korean Joint Chiefs of Staff announced the launch in a statement saying the missiles were fired from the northwest city of Kaesong and traveled roughly 260 miles to the east. American negotiators are currently in South Korea for discussions on how to break the impasse following 2 high-level summits between President Donald Trump and North Korean leader Kim Jong-un that failed to secure any lasting changes. Kim Jong-un apparently shopped himself around, and there was a higher bidder. This is the only thing that makes sense given their meeting, given everything that occurred. I think it's safe to say that the Russians made them a better offer and they took it. And right now, whenever Putin says jump, Chunky Kim will say how high, and he will continue to be a thorn in the side of the West because the Russians have an end game. They have a goal. They have a scenario that they're playing out in their heads. And weakening America as much as possible is part of that scenario. You notice how everybody waited with bated breath to see what would come of this whole Mueller thing. And when they realized that that wasn't going anywhere, they ratcheted up things again because a strong America is not in their playbook. A strong America is not what they want to see. And what's sad, let's just call it sad. It's tragic, but it's also sad, is that people who were elected to office in this country apparently don't realize that they're harming the country. It's come to that point. You're causing harm to the nation by insisting on something you know has no merit, by insisting on something you know has no legs. Look, there was no collusion. The fact that you keep saying there was isn't going to change facts. But this is what they do. This is what they've always done. They keep hammering their narrative. The media keeps backing them. And it plants that seed of doubt in people's heads. It plants that what if. What if after 2 years of 20 lawyers who despise Trump to his very core, investigated the man in every way possible, and they didn't find anything? What if they missed something? Look, they didn't miss anything. There was no collusion. And the fact that there was no collusion makes it far more difficult for them to attempt to impeach this president, because this is where it's headed. Let's be honest. I think that they realize they don't have a shot at 2020. Not with the economy doing what it is, and not with things going the way they are. And so the last bullet in their chamber is going to have to be an attempted impeachment. But there were no high crimes and misdemeanors, so I don't see the logic of it. I don't know what to make of it other than just to say that it's going to be an interesting 2 years until the next elections. It's not even 2 years. Oh, my. It's like a year and a half and change. Time does fly, doesn't it? And for all these many weeks, for all these many months, for these 2 years and change, the media and the other side have had one purpose, one goal, one scheme, one plan, one plot, one vision, one dream, one fantasy. And that is to somehow delegitimize a duly elected president of these United States, to somehow separate the man from his base so he has no shot at 2020, or make up enough stuff about him wherein it'll swing 2%, 3% of the vote, because that's really all they need. And understand that they're not letting up. They keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and eventually, as is always the case, you push 1 inch too far. See, when you play with dynamite, eventually you blow off your fingers. Statistically speaking, it's only a matter of time. And I think this is what is happening to American politics today, is that they're playing with dynamite. And at some point, they're going to blow off their fingers. So let's get back to this North Korea story, because it is relevant. It's interesting, especially given that, as I said, a week ago, 10 days ago, Kim Jong-un was in Russia eating caviar with Putin. And remember what Putin said? Oh, I'm willing to be, the intermediary, the middleman between talks, North Korea, America. We make peace, maybe, yes, I am willing to do this. Look, he had no intention. Let's be honest. Because this is sort of a triangle of animosity. It's basically Trump and Putin against globalism, and then Putin against Trump, and Trump against Putin, and everybody is suspicious of each other, and everybody wants to rule over the other, or at least to vanquish. And so it's not going to be a pretty outcome. And the attempted undermining of this administration at every turn isn't helping matters at all. Look, it's one thing to have the support of your government and go into a meeting, go into a discussion, go into a negotiation, clear-headed without just everyone lobbing feces grenades at you. And it's another to go into it like Donald Trump has been for the last 2 years, just beaten upside the head every single day by every single person, whether they know anything about the situation or not, whether they're, in the know, as the kids like to say. It doesn't matter to them. As long as you have something negative to say about this administration, as long as you have something negative to say about Donald Trump, they will put you on the news. They will give you airtime. The biggest sleaze bag since the Assad himself, the lawyer for an actress, just a disgusting human being from head to toe. He was given hours and hours of airtime for no other reason than because he kept saying that he had a way of bringing down the Trump administration. The man has now been indicted on both coasts for trying to embezzle and steal and cajole millions of dollars from multinational companies. You see, these people don't care who they associate themselves with. They don't care who they have to befriend in order to harm this administration. Their motto has always been, my enemy's enemy is my friend. They know this very well. And while all the Democrats just march in lockstep over the edge, while all of them are saying the same thing, you have guys like, who was it? The guy from North Carolina, Richard Burr, the senator from North Carolina, deciding to subpoena Donald Trump Jr. now, even though the entire matter has been closed. It's resolved. It's cleared. There's nothing to it. There's no collusion. And the one thing that I want to see is when Richard Burr of North Carolina does retire from the U.S. Senate, which of the media outlets will he serve as a mouthpiece for? Because all of these people, I've noticed a pattern. I like patterns. Patterns tell me things. All the people that were heavy-handed against this administration have landed cush jobs with CNN, with MSNBC. They're senior analysts and advisors. How do you land that kind of job? Riddle me that. You have a guy like Jeff Flake, who, let's just be generous and open-hearted and say, is not the most charismatic guy in the world. Jeff Flake is now a CNN or MSNBC contributor. Look, my question and what I would like to see investigated is how early before they decide not to run for public office again are these people approached with fat contracts for millions of dollars? And what sort of compromises do they have to make in order to get the benefits of said contracts? Because if you don't believe that favors are being exchanged for a 5-year contract at $1 million a year to appear as a talking head for 5 minutes every week, then you're not living in the real world. Look, I've said this before, and it's worth repeating. One of the most disheartening things that I realized recently is that, for the most part, the American government is as much of a banana republic and a tin pot republic as the country I left. The numbers they're throwing around are bigger, but as far as the seedy underbelly and the backroom deals and you scratch my back and I'll scratch yours nonsense, there's no difference. And that's disappointing and disheartening. Because by providence itself, the founding fathers put together a government unlike has been in the history of the world. And you go through it piece by piece, from the Constitution to the Electoral College to the Bill of Rights. And you can't help but see that these men were divinely inspired to set up a constitutional republic unlike has been in the history of the world. The United States is being held in contempt because he refuses to break the law. That's a bridge too far for me. Do you understand that that's what just happened in the United States Congress? They found William Barr in contempt because he was unwilling to break the law. Because Jerry Nadler, also known as Fat Jerry, wants the whole report, including the redacted bits, which are grand jury testimony. You can't have those, Fat Jerry. It's against the law for you to get grand jury testimony. And William Barr said as much. And now the Oversight Committee is holding him in contempt, and it's going to go for the vote in the entire Congress. And I'm not holding out hope that there's enough intelligent Democrats to vote against it. Because, again, they are marching in lockstep. They have one purpose and one intent: to impeach this president. And if they keep playing dirty the way they have been, they're going to find themselves starting a civil war in this country. I know. Who'd have thunk it? Who could have seen this coming since 1984? So, yes, it's going to get worse. Whether now or later, it is going to happen. The only question is, what is the straw that will break the camel's back? What is that one thing that bridged too far? That last and final insult to the American people that they just won't be able to stomach anymore. Because it's coming. One of these days, it's going to happen. But let's get back to North Korea and finish out this article because, again, the timing of it is undeniable. The least they could have done is waited for a month. And then Vladimir could have picked up the phone and say, hey, go push a button. And this is one of the reasons the Chinese are walking away from the negotiations. Because they're seeing a new power triangle forming. They're seeing a new power structure forming. And they think they can weather the storm. Because right now, 25% tariffs on another $200 billion might hurt just a smidge. But I think the Chinese are going to try to roll the dice and see if Chunky Kim could derail things a bit. So the article continues and it says, the launch comes less than a week after North Korea fired several short-range missiles on Saturday, the first such weapons test since November 2017. So think on that. Since November 2017, it's now May 2019. They haven't fired off any weapons. They haven't tested any such missiles. Kim Jong-un goes and meets with Vladimir Putin, and he starts firing missiles again. There is no such thing as coincidence when it comes to global politics. Please understand. North Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs on Thursday defended Saturday's launch as a routine and self-defensive military drill, a spokesman said. The test was nothing more than part of the regular military training, and it has neither targeted anyone nor led to an aggravation of the situation in the region. In a separate statement, North Korean state media reported that the missiles did not threaten the U.S., South Korea, or Japan and dropped into North Korean-controlled waters. Analysts say the missile trajectory and the distance it traveled were not indicative of ballistic weapons. This was a shot across the bow. They wanted to see how the U.S. would react. And the U.S. has reacted decisively, because the latest news is that the U.S. sees this North Korean ship suspected of violating UN sanctions. So the missile launches were a tease, and they were hoping that Donald Trump was too busy dealing with Fat Jerry Nadler and all the other idiots in Congress not to have noticed. They were wrong. So it says that the 17,000-ton freighter called the Wise Honest, well, there's a name for you, was stopped in Indonesia last year after it was found to be carrying coal. The U.S. has seized the North Korean freighter that was caught shipping coal in violation of UN sanctions, the Justice Department revealed Thursday. The 17,000-ton cargo ship called the Wise Honest was stopped in Indonesia last year after it was found to be carrying coal. The ship's captain was charged with violating Indonesian law last July, and the U.S. filed an action to seize the ship, according to court papers. Now, the stick-it wicket is going to be when they start stopping Russian ships bringing supplies to North Korea. I don't know if we are going to confiscate Russian ships, but if we start doing that, let's just say tensions will escalate. Federal prosecutors said the seizure marks the first time the U.S. has taken possession of a North Korean ship for violating international sanctions. This sanctions-busting ship is now out of service, said John Demere, Assistant Attorney General for the Justice Department's National Security Division. The Wise Honest, North Korea's second largest ship for carrying bulk cargo, was on its way to American Samoa, U.S. officials said. On Thursday, the Justice Department asked the federal judge to give the U.S. ownership of the vessel through a civil forfeiture action, the same thing prosecutors do when they seek to take ownership of planes or boats used by drug smugglers. The Justice Department says the U.S. is entitled to take this action because payments to maintain and equip the vessel were made through American banks. Legalese jargon, blah, blah, blah. Our office uncovered North Korea's scheme to export tons of high-grade coal to foreign buyers by concealing the origin of their ship. So basically, this was an answer to Kim Jong-un's launch of new missiles. Where this goes from here, I do not know. But there is the possibility that things will calm down anew and they'll set up another meeting. But there's also the very likely possibility that tensions will increase, and then you will see the media pivot once more and blame Donald Trump for the failures of North Korean diplomacy. I can hear your feedback, Gino. Just so you know. All right. The North Korean statement condemned the continuation of joint U.S.-South Korean military exercises in the region, which Kim has repeatedly condemned as provocative war games. Neither the White House nor Trump immediately commented on the launch on Thursday. The president tweeted shortly after the Saturday lunch that he believes Kim realizes the great economic potential of North Korea and will do nothing to interfere or end it, adding he also knows that I am with him and does not want to break his promise to me. Well, it would seem that he has been promised other things by other people, and some time ago, it's been at least 3 months, we had a discussion about carrots and sticks. And if on one side you have someone offering you a carrot and a stick, and on the other side you have someone offering you all carrot and no stick, you're going to take the carrot without the stick because nobody likes the stick. And that's the sticky wicket here. Look, the North Koreans want to hang on to their nuclear material. They want to continue trying to make nuclear weapons. America will not allow that, and the Russians don't care. And, you know, just a reasonable evaluation of the situation tells me that Kim will probably take the Russian offer just because there was no stick. The launch likely challenges the patience of Washington and Seoul at a contentious time as two powers struggle to determine how to proceed in denuclearization talks while Korea seeks to increase its leverage. Kim traveled to eastern Russia last month, to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin to discuss how the two countries could cooperate, representing their first face-to-face meeting and a North Korean leader's first trip to the country in almost a decade. Kim and Trump's meeting in Vietnam in February, their second, ended at an impasse over American insistence that North Korea agree to denuclearize and Pyongyang's demand that the U.S. provide sanctions relief first. So that was the impasse. Apparently, Putin didn't demand that. Earlier this week, the Pentagon announced it had ceased efforts to recover the remains of American war dead, citing an inability to contact their North Korean counterparts. That arrangement had been one of the most highly touted results of Trump's meeting with Kim. In a phone call on Tuesday following Saturday's launch, Trump reportedly encouraged South Korean President Moon Jae-in to continue providing food aid to the North, a crisis both South Korea and the United States say Pyongyang has manufactured, saying it is timely and will be a positive move. So that's where we are with that. Now, I'm guessing you've probably seen it because it's been making the rounds on the internet. I'm going to pivot. I'm learning to pivot. No, I will not be getting into politics. I'm too honest for that. But there's a very chilling video that's been making the rounds of Muslim children talking about, Muslim things like beheading Jews and the such. And as a father, what struck me the most about the entire thing was that while the children were reciting these poems and singing these songs about martyring themselves for Allah, about cutting off the heads of Jews, not one parent stood up incensed and grabbed their kid and walked out of there. Not one parent protested the fact that their child was being indoctrinated to hate. And a couple of days ago, actually it was yesterday. Wow. Okay. Yesterday. Who knew? It's been busy in the Boldea house, so my apologies. Yesterday, I wrote an article on my blog, and I want to share it with you because I think it's very telling. We need to realize that there is a clear and present danger within the nation. There are people who are Islamists. There are people who believe that if you do not convert, you must die, and die in the most horrible way. And the name of the article was Generational Hate. And it begins like this. The first time my eldest daughter went to children's church during Sunday service, she learned a song declaring that Jesus loved the little ones like her. The week after, she learned that Jesus loves the little children. Then it was, he's got the whole world in his hands. And a few weeks later, it was the Bible, that is the book for me. To this day, she still breaks out in song, spontaneously, something she learned along with other children in a house of worship. Sometimes I join in, but most of the time I just listen to her singing with all the devotion and exuberance an almost 5-year-old can muster. Her enthusiasm makes up for the questionable pitch, and her smile is so broad as she belts out the latest song she learned. It's contagious. Never once throughout the many children's churches she attended did my daughter come home singing about cutting off people's heads for Jesus or subjecting the infidel to eternal torture. If she had, it would have been our last visit to that particular church, and I'd have something to say to the Sunday school teacher that would not involve a friendly tone. In case you haven't seen it, a quick Google search will remedy the situation, and for the sake of context, it is worth seeing. A video has surfaced of children at an Islamic center in Philadelphia. Let me repeat that. In Philadelphia, singing in concert, and if the subtitle translation of what they were singing weren't made available, your first thought might be, oh, how sweet. Unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, what they were singing in Arabic was subtitled in English. And that's when you can't help but feel the chill running down your spine as you come to terms with the fact that these children are being taught generational hatred. These children weren't singing about love or the birds or the bees and the apple trees. They weren't singing about rainbows and lollipops, puppies and raindrops. They were singing about sacrificing themselves and killing for the army of Allah and cutting off the heads of Jews. This wasn't some old VHS tape someone uncovered of some backward village in the foothills of Afghanistan. This was filmed recently in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, USA. What is exceedingly gruesome about this entire thing is that not one parent stood up, grabbed their child, and walked out of the presentation. There was not one protest, not one outraged, incensed mother or father who objected to their child being taught to hate. Love, affection, empathy are all naturally occurring in man from the time they're born. A child will reach out and nuzzle your nose or hug you or press their cheek against yours naturally. Hate, however, must be taught. Hate, pure hate. The kind of hate that can bring you to the place of trying to hack off someone's head with a rusty blade must be taught and fostered, nurtured, and encouraged. You must dehumanize the object of your hatred to the point that you do not see them as living, breathing, animated human beings, but something else, something inferior, something undeserving of breathing the same air as you. This sort of blind hatred is being passed down from father to son, from mother to daughter, not only in third world countries in the Middle East, but even in places like Philadelphia and Dearborn, New York, Los Angeles, and the list goes on and on. There are even sitting members of the U.S. Congress exhibiting the same sort of unbridled hatred. Generational hatred is the worst kind of hate because it seeps deep into the marrow and is wholly irrational. You cannot reason with someone who has surrendered to irrationality. You can't tease out what is at the root cause of their blind hatred because to them it's like breathing. It is necessary, and it's just the way it is. Everyone I know, everyone I love, everyone I respect feels the same way. How dare you insinuate I'm wrong or that I should feel any different? And that was the article I wrote for my blog. This isn't happening on another continent. This isn't happening in another country. This is happening here in these United States. Little children are being taught to hate. Little children are being taught that the Christian and the Jew are equal to vermin. That the only thing a Christian or a Jew is deserving of is death. And if you want to see the narrative that is being pushed in this country, if you want to see where we're being taken by the mass media, do a quick search and see how many of the major networks covered this most disturbing video. I guarantee you, if anyone did, it was probably only Fox. And even they would not have covered it 6 months or a year from now, because this is the last place where you might get some truth. And they're trying to do away with it. Look, understand that the noose is tightening. There are people being deplatformed left and right because someone doesn't like what they stand for and what they say, and it's usually only in one direction. See, if you have the right politics, you could be the most disgusting human being. If you have the right politics, you can say the most disturbing things. And every platform will turn a blind eye and not say a thing. But if you have the wrong politics, if perhaps or perchance you are a Christian conservative who believes, I don't know, that marriage is between a man and a woman, that God created man, God created woman, and that there aren't 87 genders, that perhaps you shouldn't inject children with hormone therapy to transition them from one sex to another when they're 5 and 6 years old. See, if you hold to those things, you are persona non grata. You are unwelcome on their platforms. You are unwelcome in the public square, as it were. Look, it's happening so fast. It's being done with such precision that we're not looking at 10, 20 years before unwelcome opinions are ever more silenced. We're looking at a year or two. And those that should be standing up and saying something about it are too busy twiddling their thumbs. Look, you'd have to be blind not to see what's happening. And understand that every individual that seems to be standing out from the pack of those running for the Democrat ticket, for the nomination to the presidency of the United States, are dangerous, dangerous people. Look, even the baby-faced demon himself, Mayor Pete. You look at him and you go, oh, this guy's harmful. But listen to him talk for more than 5 minutes. And it'll scare you, the deep-seated hatred this man has for the Word of God and for the children of God. It will scare you, the deep-seated hatred this man has for the truth. Because, see, his God validates his sodomy. And if your God condemns it, then your God is evil. But he claims to be a Christian. And I guarantee you, some easily swayed Christians are going to, he can't be that bad. He's a Christian. Look, he got a baby face. Listen to him talk about Christians and Christianity. His hatred is as dangerous as the hatred we talked about a few minutes ago, where it's generational. If these people ever come into power, you're going to know persecution. You're going to know suffering. And it's one thing to know suffering, knowing that you did everything you could as an individual. It's another thing to know suffering knowing that voices warned you time and again, and you did nothing but stare at your navel and wait for the rapture. Look, everything is coming together. It's like a spider web in reverse. It's astonishing to behold how many pieces of the puzzle are connecting all at once. And for some unexplained reason, in the midst of all this, the church is nowhere to be seen. I know. We'll pick our battle. I guarantee you when it's time, the church is going to stand. I doubt it. If it do so now, it won't ever stand. It had so many opportunities to stand. It had so many opportunities to at least try to right the ship. But we always looked to the next battle. That one's the important one. So, you want to count how many battles we've lost? You want to count how many battles we've just walked off the battlefield because we didn't think it was worth the fight, because we didn't think it was worth our time, because we didn't think it was worth putting our reputations on the line or having the world think ill of us? Be honest with yourself. Do you really want to go down the list of all the battles that the church has lost or refused to fight? Abortion, homosexual marriage, late-term abortion, post-birth abortion, transgenderism now, in children, in minors. Which battle is going to be worth fighting, church? Which one are we going to stand up for? Because if this is the thing that we pacify ourselves with, maybe it's time for a rude awakening. If this is the thing that we pacify ourselves with, maybe it's time for somebody like me to own being hated and just come out and say, stop pacifying yourself. Look, there's every reason for the church to wake up and stand up and do something. And yet, we're just watching the world go by. Oh, that kid from Indiana doesn't have a chance. That's what they said about a Muslim from Chicago. And yet, 8 years later, so, take nothing for granted. Do the work. The word itself tells us that we must work while it is day, because the night is coming. And there's a caveat for when the night comes. Jesus himself said it. When the night comes, no man can work. It doesn't say just a few men. It doesn't say only a handful, only the chosen, only the anointed, only the apostles. No man can work when the night comes. But if we've wasted the day and done nothing waiting for the great battle, redefining the term great battle because, we're just not in the mood right now. If we've wasted away the day, will God not call us to account? Because the night is coming. And when the night comes, no man can work. This is the thing that torments me. To be perfectly honest with you, I'm being torn asunder because I want to watch my children grow up. The most fascinating thing to me is waking up in the morning and seeing my daughter smile. But on the other hand, I know that the night is coming. And so rather than spend more time with them, I have to choose. I have to break away and devote more time to writing or coming and doing this program or going and preaching at a conference. Because I believe Jesus. And when Jesus said night was coming, and when Jesus said no man could work, I have to take him at his word. So stop waiting for the battle and get in the battle. Because, you rack up enough small victories and you build up momentum. And this is what the darkness has right now. The darkness has momentum. Because it has gone unchallenged by the church for so long that it thinks itself invincible. And the church is just too comfortable being asleep. It's too comfortable being cozy. It's too comfortable believing lies. It's too comfortable abdicating their role as soldiers of the cross. The church is just too comfortable. And the devil is taking advantage of it. He's exploiting it to the maximum. How many more? How many more battles are we going to sit out? How many more? I know, we're waiting for the big one. What do you consider the big one? What in your mind is worth getting off the couch and doing something? Because they're coming. And they have so thoroughly coordinated among themselves that when finally, perhaps, hopefully, prayerfully, the church decides to open its mouth and say something, with the flick of a thumb, they will be able to silence the church. And we're not understanding that. We're not seeing it. We're not forward thinking enough to realize the snare that the enemy has set up for the church. Because we're still too busy enjoying the baubles. We're still too busy flirting with the world. We're still too busy trying not to offend the godless. We're still too busy trying to prove that we're tolerant. We're still too busy trying to redefine love. We're doing what we ought not to be doing, and we're not doing what we ought to be doing. And one day, the master of the house will return. and we will have to give account. The master of the house will return, and to each he will go according to what he has given him. And inquire as to what you have done with the talents that he has bestowed you. See, I can't be responsible for you. You can't be responsible for me. We are each individually responsible for the talents that we've been given. And individually, we will answer for the talents that we've been given. We are a body, but we're also individual members. And God doesn't judge on a curve. So these are the thoughts that I wanted to share with you this night. I know we went in a few different directions, but I hope it all came together in the end. Anyway, as always, thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for your prayers. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to Gino, and he might say a few words to you. God bless you.
Thank you, Mike. You know, I'm reminded of the dream that Mike had about the wolves surrounding the deer. And the more I heard the program tonight, the more you can see every piece of the puzzle coming into play. Please go to handyhelp.com, look under the Dreams and Visions link, and read that dream that Mike had about that. Several dreams there that Mike had, but that's a very pertinent one. And I would also urge you, read the Wake Up America message online again, and read the part about the revolution, because Mike's right. What spark will ignite the fire of where people go, we've had enough? And it's getting to that point. And we have to really wake up. I'll tell you what, I couldn't agree more how the church needs to stand up, speak up, contend for the faith. And but on a good note, this last Sunday in Juneau, Wisconsin, believe it or not, we did a Christian music concert in a strip club right outside of where Handy Help's headquarters are, not outside the door, no, the county next door to Watertown, Wisconsin. The owner shut the club down for the whole day, let us do a whole concert and share the gospel, believe it or not, in the building, because he wants to get out of that business and repurpose the building. And 260 people showed up. I wrote a song called Not in Our Town, a song that tries to stand up against human sex trafficking and perversion, and does what Mike said, urges people to say, we don't want this in our town. Urges people to say that we want a decent town. And the church should be the head, not the tail. And you know what? We have to battle. We have to fight. We have to work together. But we're seeing a bit of a miracle in Dodge County now. We're praying for the last of 3 clubs. This was the last club that's open. We're praying for that building to get repurposed and to become some place that can honor the Lord. And so far, the direction of things are looking very good. So keep that all in prayer. Keep us in prayer as we continue as a ministry to try to blow a trumpet. This radio show is a great outreach of trying to blow a trumpet and encourage people to stand for what they stand for. God bless you so much.